Now, the mayor's putting a brave face on this here, but there's a lot of questions being asked about what happens next, and very few people think it's going to be an easy time for the folks of Atlantic City. We're going to talk about that in a second, but one of the voices in Trenton on this, New Jersey State Senator Ray Lesniak, he says if people listen to me all along, he's been saying this is the road that AC was heading down, and he thinks there's a few things they could do differently, including maybe sports betting, to help save the troubled city. In terms of who bears responsibility here, you think the governor has some, because some of the fellow Democrats in the Senate, including Senator Sweeney, said, hey, listen, what choice did he have? 4 years ago, he wasn't going to leave this thing half-built here. He had to finish the thing. And the former mayor in Atlantic City, now a fellow colleague of yours, is a Democrat in the legislature, says, listen, this is just supply-side economics here, supply and demand. There wasn't enough demand. Isn't the governor's fault. Are they right?
Well, first of all, Revel had to be built. There was no reason not to build. It was built by private investment. My legislation got it built. That was the right thing. But the problem is the governor didn't do anything affirmatively to bring more revenues into the city, and nor did they do anything to reinvent the city. That should have been done 4 years ago. It's still not too late, but we need to take action now.
Finally, Senator, help me out with the fuzzy math known as Trenton math here. There was always projected huge revenues from the casinos that never materialized in state budget after state budget. What happens now when everybody sees flat out these casinos are shut at their doors? Is there going to be a major readjustment, and is monies that was promised in certain places just not going to be there?
Well, the money hasn't been there. We've been losing revenues from the casinos for 4 or 5 years now, and that money has gone to support senior citizen programs, programs for the handicapped, higher education. We've redirected some of those funds, but those funds have to take a hit as well. And that's why we need a casino in North Jersey to bring back the folks who are going to New York, Pennsylvania, Maryland, Delaware, Connecticut to gamble. We need those folks back in New Jersey.
Well, on that last point here, the governor was very strident that he wasn't a big fan of the idea of putting another casino in North Jersey. He thought it'd cannibalize, you know, the appetite here and take people away from Atlantic City. Given the recent developments, do you have any sense here that the governor would go along with the plan you're discussing?
I think the governor's totally wrong. It's time to bring those revenues back into New Jersey, reinvest them in Atlantic City, reinvent Atlantic City, or else basically he's just shuffling the deck and doing nothing, and we're going to see a continued decline. That's not good. That doesn't help the folks who are out of work. We have to get it moving. Let's get a casino in North Jersey so we can remake Atlantic City and revitalize it as well.
Senator Lesniak, I appreciate a few minutes. Thank you so much.
Anytime. Thank you.
All right, let's bring in a panel right now. Jeannie Zaino, professor of political science at Ona College, professor of campaign management at NYU, and still she makes time for us. Dominic Carter, political journalist and author. Andrew Whitman, senior political correspondent. Okay, let's just start on the human level. There's no way to sugarcoat this. Casinos are the big employer there, and a huge population, thousands of families now, don't know where this is coming from. They can spin all they want. The governor's going to have it. They're going to have all the religious leaders there counseling. AC was having tough times before. It's not like they got a bunch of other jobs they're waiting to scoop up these folks.
I'm not exactly sure if it's 4,000 or 6,000 employees. Some
he said 8,000.
Some of them are finding jobs with other casinos, but that's the number of people that are out of work. And get this, Atlantic County already had the highest unemployment rate in all of New Jersey. Plus, if you just go to Atlantic City, don't go to the marina casinos, don't go to the boardwalk casinos, but look at the ground in between. It's not exactly the healthiest economic environment in New Jersey or anywhere else for that matter. This is a major hit to Atlantic City, and I'm not entirely sure it can recover from it.
We'll talk in a little bit, Dom, in next segment about broader the bet of casinos. And New York's going through this. Interesting news out of Massachusetts as well here. They might even shut the thing down before they even begin. But depressed urban communities, and remember, AC, it was so bad that the governor stepped in and basically started policing it himself with his own folks here because he made a bet that he could save it with the Revel. $2.5 billion they poured into this thing 2 years ago. And now all of a sudden, turn out the lights, right, and take off the sign. I worry. I mean, you're that mayor tonight here, and there's a point where you say in Trenton, they're not going to keep pouring money into Atlantic City. You know, it's throwing good money after bad.
A mayor of a city is the chief cheerleader of that area, but the handwriting is on the wall for the mayor of Atlantic City. Keep this in mind, Richard. Those jobs that you and Andrew just mentioned and the professor will talk about, that less tax base that's now going to come to Atlantic City. So you're dealing with a rough situation. You're dealing with a situation where the political environment in Atlantic City, several of the mayors there have gone to jail for corruption. And so they're trying to turn it around. It's one big mess, and it's not looking good.
And you know, Jeannie, summer's over now, right? I'm sorry to say it, but it is. They got to figure out a way. If you're Trenton right now, they said timeout. They took all the revenue, they took the money that they're putting for the horse racing industry that really wasn't, it's a dime. The casinos in Connecticut, it's even a shorter ride. So I think we don't know where they're going to be, but if they open near the Woodbury Commons, I think that one's got a good shot at making it. There's more stuff to do, but it gets dangerous. But I look at what happened in Massachusetts. We got a referendum coming up here. Where voters in a couple months are going to say, yeah, I know we approved them and all, and we're getting ready to open all of these casinos, but you know what? Let's rethink this. Do you still want casinos or not? I think politicians beware on this one, Jeannie. I think people are seeing not just Atlantic City, but this oversaturation of casinos, and they're really starting to worry if it's fool's gold.
Yeah, and you know, what's really concerning is the fact that, as Dominic mentioned, I mean, none of us know what's going to happen. One by Woodbury Common could be very successful and another one not. But that said, I think the problem here is people, just as an example, in New York, in upstate New York, are so hungry for blue-collar jobs. People are willing, any jobs. People are willing to take a bet on this. And unfortunately for all of us, you know, the sad truth is Governor Cuomo will be long gone before this thing fails. And so how do you hold somebody accountable? There's no accountability. I mean, this goes back to the issue with Governor Christie. He didn't set this thing up. I mean, you know, I'm blaming him for going to Mexico. He didn't set this thing up, and yet the people in New Jersey are stuck with this. So politically, that's a big problem. Governor Cuomo has an incentive to push for this, and he did. And people have a right to get excited about it with the jobs it offers. But if it fails in 2, 4, 6 years, he's probably going to be in the White House or long gone from the governor's office, and the next governor will be responsible for those job losses. So politically, it's a huge, huge problem for
You're
New
Cuomo?
York
You think it's still a good bet?
I do, but I have to be very careful not to rely on the budgeting of revenue from these things. Let it be an added windfall into the state. I mean, I know you're thinking he's never going to do that. You're going to bank on the money that you think's coming in. You're going to budget based on that. They always do. That's what's hurting New Jersey as a state, particularly.
And just explain the audience what Andrew's talking about is when they do their budgeting, they forecast revenues that they project that they're going to make. And every year they overinflate how much the casinos are going to bring in. Cuomo's going to do the same thing in New York. Don't kid yourself. Legislature's going to go along with it because then they don't have to make tough cuts. But then lo and behold, the numbers come in. And who would have imagined the money doesn't match up to what they project?
But
It's going to happen again.
It's never going to be that they're going to do that. I mean, they're never going to assume that they're not going to get those revenues. So that's just, you know.
Prudence would dictate otherwise, seeing the lessons
but it would
learned
never
in New Jersey.
happen.
The other thing, and because you asked what the state of the industry is, Las Vegas, let's remove that. That's a separate entity. But the business model, I think, may be dying, which is these massive casino hotel complexes that cost $2.5 billion to build, and then you have to make X number of monthly dollars every month just to pay your debt load. Then on top of that, pay all of your bills, pay your employees, and all of that. I think the trend going forward is going to have to be smaller casinos that don't necessarily have the big hotels that are connected to them.
Think they're coming for the day and going home.
Exactly. And you look at that, that's almost the business model that's in place at Aqueduct and at Empire City.
Yeah.
The only problem is they're not allowed to have table games.
Well, and let me just say, in defense of Chris Christie, what about online gambling, which seems to be something that
What are you,
may sell?
bipolar? 5 minutes ago, you're banging the guy. Now all of a sudden he's the greatest thing.
He's not the greatest thing, but that may be something that's a new business model that would sell better. But
It's so funny. Do you remember? I know we got to go break. 10 years ago, we have this conversation about casinos. It's the morality of it. You know, like, you know, should the state get in the business of getting behind casinos and the addictions and all the rest? We went over that hurdle. Now all of a sudden it's like, hey, maybe sports gaming. You know, like, hey, yeah, maybe we play the. Now forget the ponies. We bet the games on Sunday. We do it right at the casinos. You don't have to. So it's funny what we're willing to go down, right? All right. Coming up next here, we're going to switch gears to politics. The U.S. Senate up for grabs. Republicans on Capitol Hill, they only need 6 seats to take the Senate back here. But the question is, what is really going to make up the minds of voters between now and November? We'll get into that and more after this.